So while we're waiting to go live, thank you if you're joining us live, and if you're watching the replay, thank you also for joining into the Friday Fix. Hopefully we're connecting to YouTube and Facebook alike. We'd love for you to share this out. We've got some special guests and some things to talk about that I think will be very helpful to you and maybe to some members of your family. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the Friday Fix. Well, I hope our internet connection stays good for us today. Welcome to the Friday Fix. My name is Charles Baldwin. This is the Friday Fix because we know that you've just finished your week, and hopefully you had a good week. And we're going to give you some things to think about over the weekend to get charged back up so that you can go back to work or school and feel charged back up. Got a special guest tonight. I'm excited to have him come on and talk to you a little bit about his journey and his story. Before we do that, I want to give you my 2 cents. Over the last couple of years, there have been so many lives that's been lost from the results of severe anxiety and depression. Being locked down, out of work, not being able to go to school or visit friends and relatives has brought on a wave of drug and alcohol abuse. Sadly, it has led to unprecedented number of suicides in adults and also in young people. With so much unrest in our countries and the constant fear of the sickness, many people have fell into a mental state that has caused their life to stand still or worse, digress. The good news is that there is hope. There are ways that you can overcome these feelings of failure and hopelessness. Having control of your mind is essential and moving forward with your life and finding strength and success. Sadly, many people have started drinking more alcohol and taking drugs, both legal and illegal, looking for peace, trying to numb the pain. There are a lot of you who might have decided to just sit on the couch and watch endless TV shows. Every day is important. Time is probably the most valuable asset that we have. So my advice would be, don't waste it. It's very precious. The goal of our enemy is to make you feel hopeless and dependent, to not have the strength and desire to move forward with your life. We're social creatures, and we need fellowship, and we need personal conversation. When that social aspect of life is limited or taken away, it can bring on worry. It can bring on anxiety and depression. If you already suffer with these things, it can make it far worse. Taking control of your mind is the secret of being able to overcome these feelings. Creating good habits in place of bad ones. Expressing gratitude. Reading and listening to things that lift your spirit. Setting goals for yourself and your family. Giving and helping others. Those are just a few ways that you can improve your life. Don't allow the oppression of government and negative news to control your life. You must take control. Feed your mind with good things. Meditate and pray, and you will find yourself rising above those feelings of discouragement. I would love for you to share this. I'd love for you also to comment. If you have any comments, we'll be able to see them live. And that is my 2 cents. So as I mentioned a minute ago, we're live, and so we have the capability of seeing your chats. We're going to try to keep up with them, and also welcome you if you're joining us live. Um, I'm excited to have a guest with us. I met this man virtually, and we've become friends virtually. I've never met him in person, but I feel like I know him. He is a very positive person, and he seeks every day to make himself better, which I really do respect. Not only that, he's very consistent in what he does, and I feel like that is one of the most important things on your road to success is being consistent in whatever that you do. His name is Pete Jones, and he has a podcast called Good in the Head, which is awesome. It took me a while to be able to say all that when I see it, but after meeting him and listening to him, I understand Good in the Head. And I think after you listen to what Pete has to say to us tonight, you will understand it as well. I'm going to play for you the introduction to his podcast, and then we will bring on Mr. Pete Jones. Well, it's my honor to welcome Pete Jones. Pete, glad to have you with us on the Friday Fix.
Charles, thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure and an honor to be speaking with you again. I really love what you've done with the show. It's entertaining, it's very well presented, and it's awesome. Thank you for having me as a guest.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and thank you for that compliment. I've been trying to learn. Now I'm doing the thing that really makes me the most nervous is going live. But when I was telling you that earlier, you said, well, we're live 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So that helps. We are. Pete, I'd like to start out. I know you've got a podcast. You're doing a lot of things now. I know that it wasn't always this way for you, and you've got an interesting journey. And I would like for you to share some of that with us. Before you do, I put a post on Facebook to advertise this show, and I would like to read some of it as a segue into what you want to talk to us about. It's having anxiety and depression is like being scared and tired at the same time. It is the fear of failure, but no urge to be productive. It's wanting friends, but hating to socialize. It's wanting to be alone, but not wanting to be lonely. It's caring about everything, then caring about nothing. It's feeling everything at once, then feeling paralyzingly numb. I didn't write that, but I seen that, and it really spoke to what we're going to be talking about tonight. And I would like for you to kind of introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you, and if you don't mind, we'll talk about your journey, where you've come from, and um, later on where you're going.
Sure. Sounds good. Great. Thank you. First of all, I have to thank I consider my brother from another mother. I've never met him in person. He is in Wales and married to a childhood friend that my wife and I had throughout grade school, junior high, and high school. She just happened to go over there and meet him. His name's Tim Higgins, and he's been providing a safe space from where I do all of this work at goodinthehead.com, and he's been doing it for free. And it's interesting, in 2017, 3 years after I began my new life in 2014, he reached out and said, hey, would you ever want to consider doing a blog? And that blog then turned into a website, and on YouTube, the Good in the Head podcast. And there I share my journey, my old story, and a lot of content that I've been able to research over the years. And it's been a real blessing to be able to know someone so generous and giving as Tim. And I really appreciate him and what he's doing for not just me, but for everyone who connects with Good in the Head. Um, Good in the Head is all one word. It's also on Facebook and Instagram, Twitter. And I'd love if you would follow, check some of that out, share it, copy anything you want from any part of that website, change it up, make it your own, give it away, sell it. I just really want these tools out to everyone because I think what you read just now resonates with everyone. It's just the human experience. We all go through moments in our lives where we all experience every bit of that. We've all experienced hopelessness, painful moments, years of suffering, and also the opposite. We've learned from those things, and it's instructed us how to become more of who we can be while in these bodies in this human experience.
Absolutely. And you're right. We want to give everybody the opportunity to go and read your stuff. You've got some very interesting things and you post on a regular basis. Uh, Pete, you weren't always good in the head, right?
No, I was born to a really great family, a very young set of parents who had gone through their own things in life, and learned to deal with them as they were raising me and three of my sisters for years. When I was 5, they joined the Mormon Church. We were raised in that religion, and at the age of 19, I was called to serve a 2-year mission and was lucky enough to be sent to Athens, Greece, where I learned the culture, the language, and I learned to love the people and the country so, so much. And I met people from all over the world there. It was incredible.
That's awesome. Also, while we take a little break, I want to say hello to Ryan Belcher and Forrest. My son's on here, and my wife. We've got a few other people that's on here. My wife has dropped in the chat a link to the goodinthehead.com where your website is. Pete, as I was on your website reading some of your story, it was really interesting. I was raised similar to you. I was raised in a uh, going to church in a religious family, and a lot of times we have that to fall back on, but sometimes we're human too, and things happen in our lives, and sometimes we feel out of control. Um, how old were you, or when did you first feel that? I know you said that you suffered from anxiety and depression. What brought that on, and when did that start for you?
Well, I was blessed to be married at a fairly young age, and immediately we had a child. Didn't really have an education, and so I ended up working long, long hours. Many of them were 18-hour days, 7 days a week for months with no days off. And physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, I was just exhausted. There was really no time for self-care, let alone contributing to raising a child and being a good husband and being present. And eventually, one day my boss told me, she said, you're moody. And the way I took that was, oh, there's something wrong with me. And later that day, I went home and discussed it with my wife at that time and asked her, am I moody? Is there something wrong with me? And she goes, well, maybe we should go see a doctor. So we went in and saw a doctor, and immediately he didn't even ask me for details. He just said, oh, you're depressed. I'll give you some Prozac. And so I got onto Prozac. And at that time, I was about 25, 26 years old. And for a month, I literally slept 2 hours a night, had all the energy in the world, lost 45 pounds in 1 month, and quit my job, started a different job, started full-time schooling, and turned into superhuman. And I didn't understand it, but I was like, hey, this is cool. This is how it ought to be. And my ex-wife that I was married to at that time, she's like, oh my gosh, you're like Superman. And one day, after a month of that, for no reason at all, I remember I just stopped functioning normally. Of course, that exhaustion catches up with you physically and emotionally. And I quit my job, bought a gun, drove into the mountains, and wrote a bunch of letters goodbye to the people that I loved the most, and stared down the barrel and started to pull the trigger. And the thing that stopped me was I immediately got the vision of what was now two babies and the legacy that I would leave behind for them if I were to go through with this. And immediately I put the gun down. I was like, what am I doing? I had a good cry and it all just came out and I finally felt better. So that emotional release really helped. Drove back down the mountain in the middle of a blizzard and immediately called my ex-wife from a payphone and told her what had happened. And she got me into a group home the next day through her uncle, Brent, who was a world-renowned child psychiatrist. He's a brilliant man and a great help to us at that time in our lives. And spent less than 24 hours in that group home. They said, oh, you're not depressed, you're bipolar. They labeled me yet again and told me that I had to be on medications in order to function properly. And from that point on, for the next 15 years, I was on Depakote, Depakine, and finally lithium. And I've tried over 20 different antidepressants. And for a
Wow.
15-year period from 1999 to 2014, I was on those medications. And there wasn't one day that I wanted to be alive. I just wanted to stop living. And those medications, that they're not supposed to do that, I don't think. But for me, that's how that went. And it was pretty ugly. And I'm really surprised and grateful that my wife at that time lasted as long as she did. We were married 12 years, had three beautiful boys. And eventually, our marriage dissolved. It ended. And I was in Colorado when that happened, came back to Arizona with my three sons and sort of started over. And for years, dragged them through relationship after relationship. Um, we learned a lot. And I teased my son when he was 16. One time I said, look, my youngest, you should be thanking me for being such a screw up your whole life. He's like, why would you even say that? And I told him, well, look, I showed you your whole life what not to do.
What
And
not to
now I can
do.
finally start showing you through example of different ways to be and what to
Yeah.
do, because I'm finally learning those things. So,
What stood out to me, a couple of things was, when you started going through that and you said, first of all, you were put on Prozac, I believe, and then you got to that point of wanting to take your own life. And what saved your life was the thought and the legacy of your children. What would they say about you should you have went through that? And that saved you. And that's an important point that we should all take note of, how important that our family is to us and what they mean. And that's why I think the family unit is probably beyond our spiritual realm and God, or our relationship with him. The family is probably the most important thing that can save us in a lot of cases.
that's so true. And you got to have a big reason why there's so many people that are they feel like they're completely alone and they feel hopeless and they want their suffering to end the same way I know that I did. And if there's no big reason why, then it's easy to justify ending things sometimes. But if we can refocus constantly on our big reason why, whether it's possible future relationships or great grandchildren someday, that wouldn't exist if we were to take our lives. I mean, you never know. If you just hang in there, things always get better. Bad times don't last. Good times don't either, and that's okay. But the bad
That's a good
times aren't
point.
going to last forever.
That's a good point. Good times don't last either, and we know that we've got to be prepared for those bad things when they do come. Um, that's interesting. And then you spent, I think you said 14 or 15 years um, on other drugs, trying other drugs, and that wasn't the answer either. What turned out to be the answer? What got you? to getting your head set right and free from the drugs.
This is a great story, actually. I was on my third marriage, and we had together 6 children. And by then, my sons would go to their moms for a couple of weeks, and then they would come home for a couple of weeks. And we had a really rough time. And the woman that I was married to at the time was really controlling. And thank God that she was, because one day I woke up with yet another plan to end my life. And I was so frustrated because I thought I was doing everything right. I was taking the medications, I was doing what the doctors told me. And she looked at me and she asked a question I'd never even thought to ask myself. She said, "Look, have these medications in 15 years that you've been taking them ever once helped you?" And that made me think for the first time about it. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, no, never." And she said, "Okay, well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to get you checked into a mental hospital. Let's call your insurance." And I checked myself in that day. And basically, what I thought I was going into was uh, a safe environment where I could see a doctor and be out within a few days on maybe some different medications, or we could figure something out. And instead, what I entered into, and I share this, it's entitled My Old Story in the blog post. For 4 days, I was over medicated, literally drooling, could barely walk, had to hold myself up on the railing to get to group, and didn't get to see the doctor all weekend. And finally, on Monday morning, I said, "Look, I don't feel like I belong here. This isn't exactly what I thought it was going to be, and I need to get out of here." But the gift in being in that facility was, for the first time in my life, I went to group. And I had always been so filled with shame and guilt and embarrassment about being so shattered and broken and weak, and the way that I saw myself at that time. And in there, I saw people share the most horrific experiences and the most beautiful stories. And they were all struggling just like me. Many of them had far worse issues, and the thoughts were darker. They were open and honest, and they were transparent. They shared it all. And it made me feel comfortable, like I could finally bare my soul, and a weight was lifted as soon as I did. And to
Wow.
have someone that you can share everything with and be received as one of them, it was empowering. And I was so grateful for a group. And I have gone to groups since then, and it is so empowering, and it just lifts the load right off you. It's enlightening to be able to
Well,
do that.
so did you, before that, before you experienced that group experience, did you feel like you were alone, or like you were the only one that was going through that?
Absolutely. And how silly and egotistical and maniacally selfish of me to think that, because I really now believe that sooner or later we all feel so devoid of hope and dark and alone, that it's kind of a dishonor to ourselves to believe that we're alone when there's so many out there that we could, like you had mentioned, service. We could turn around and go help someone, or go to a soup kitchen and feed someone. And there's so many things we can do for others. Just a smile to a stranger on the street can change the trajectory of their whole life. We don't know, how big of an impact what we do really has in the lives of others.
That's such a good point. And, I think the enemy would like for us to be destroyed because, like you said, you don't know how many people that you are impacting now, or that I'm impacting. And what if we didn't do this? I think sometimes of some of the people who have had such a big influence to hundreds and thousands and millions of people, and if they had a took a different turn, what would have happened? And I want everyone to realize that they are important, no matter how unimportant or insignificant you may feel that you are. Pete is just a good example of, no matter how low you get to the point of wanting to take your own life, that there are different things ahead. there are things that can be good, and to be able to help someone, especially share what you're sharing, it's going to speak to a lot of people who have been through that exact same thing. And Pete, you've made it through, and you're having a big impact. Tell me about some of the things that you're doing, and have you had anybody say thank you for sharing your story, or what you said really helped me, and what kind of impact that had on you?
Oh, man, for sure. First of all, I want to acknowledge your wife. She is so kind and generous, and what a supportive wife you have. What a blessing and gift she must be in your life. Just from the
Yes, I
comments
am.
I'm reading, I'm kind of blown away. She's
I
sweet.
am blessed. Yep, she's always been there to back me up.
So in 2014, I got out of that hospital, and within a few months, I had been going to some counseling, which was amazingly helpful. And I had my doubts because I'd been to counselors in the past, and never once did I really align with what they were trying to shove down my throat. But this guy was really great. And my wife at that time and I ended up deciding that it would be best if we got a divorce. And she would kind of say things like, now that you're not on those medications and you're thinking clearly, you're more yourself, you have an opinion, and I don't know what to do with that. And it was true. I wasn't the same person anymore off of the medications that I was on them. And I'm just so grateful that, I mean, it was like God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, placed her into my life at that time at the perfect moment to do what I was incapable of doing for myself for me. And I'm
Right.
really grateful for that relationship. She met with some people at church and was talking about what I was going through. And they actually had a few children that had similar behavior patterns, thoughts, like dark desires. And they had reached out and done a lot of research, and they found a company called True Hope up in Canada. And the man that created this, it's all vitamins and minerals. It's all natural. There's no pharmaceutical medications or whatever. It's called Q96 Empower Plus. And I started to take that, and it really helped. It gave me the nutrition for my brain and body that I just wasn't getting through diet alone. And it had really helped their children. So we thought, hey, why don't I try that? And the man that created the company, True Hope, lost his daughter and wife to suicide. And from what I understand, he was a chemist, and he dedicated his life to creating something that would help others that were going through similar situation that his daughter and wife were before they took their lives. And I'm so grateful for that product. I actually have been taking that ever since 2014. I don't sell it or try to make money off of it. I mean, I have been a advocate of that in the past, but I mean, now with the internet, anybody can go out and just search, True Hope, the company, or Q96 or Empower Plus, and try it out for themselves. And I'm a big proponent of experimenting with everything, keeping what works and leaving behind what doesn't.
Yeah,
So that's
I've
where the
noticed that
website
about
came
you.
from.
I've noticed that. Yeah, you say you're open to experiment with almost anything, and that's good that you say that. I keep what works, I throw away what doesn't. A lot of times people put up a blockade, to keep anything new or different from coming into their life, and when they do that, a lot of times they miss out on the very thing that might just change their life or help them with whatever the issue may be.
Yeah, so true. Your wife asked, how long did it take you to share your story through the blog or online? And 2014, I literally started over with nothing. I had clothes, and gratefully, a very supportive family. My mom and her husband let me live in their condo while they were living in Alaska, here in Gilbert, Arizona. And for 6 months, I was there starting over. And for that whole first year till 2015, I did a lot of work, and I explained some of that on the website. I started small, baby steps, and just one thing at a time. Each month, I would add a new habit, and it started out with seeking out quotes that I wanted to believe and expand into and experience for myself. And I would read them every day. Um, so in 2015, I believe it was, I met the woman I'm now married to, who has been an absolute gift for me, my boys, and everyone that uh, has her in their lives. She's amazing. And in 2017, a few years after we had been together, that's when Tim had reached out online and said, "Hey, why don't you start a blog?" And so that's where that came from.
Wow. So I know it helps to there's a freedom when you're able to get all that off your chest and say, "There, I've said it," and because I know a lot of times people carry shame and guilt from mistakes that they've made in their past, and we do have to be able to get ourselves free from that. And um, I'm glad that you shared those things and what you're doing now. What drives you to do what you're doing now? I mean, I'm a podcaster too, so I know you're not getting filthy rich by doing these things. So, what drives you and keeps you going? Because, as I said earlier, you're very consistent in what you do. You're always reading. You're always posting things and reaching out and sowing seed is what I call it. Um, what keeps you moving forward, Pete?
The blessing of having gone through everything that I did for so long, and then realizing that there's literally something else out there waiting for me to uh, discover it and experiment with it and learn from it and grow. I have to pass on the things that I learn because they've helped me so much. It started out with people like Tony Robbins and listening to his content in the morning, his mentor Jim Rohn, and Jim Rohn's mentor John Earl Schoaf, way back decades ago.
Yes.
And then eventually I got turned on to podcasts. Tom Bilyeu and Lisa Bilyeu, they both have podcasts. Impact Theory on YouTube, Women of Impact, Relationship Theory is all about relationships, and then Discussions with Tom. And through hundreds of their podcasts that I have listened to over the last 4 years, I was able to be directed to other podcasters and listen to their shows and their guests. And I've bought far too many books that I haven't yet read. And there's just an unlimited amount of content out there. It all depends on what we choose to think about the most. And the consistency is purely a selfish thing. I know that if I'm not consistent with these habits that I've strategically implemented into a morning routine and set alarms throughout the day to remind me to do certain things at certain times, that it won't get done. It's easy to do and it's easy not to do, like Jim Rohn
Right.
teaches.
There's a couple of questions I have for you that I like to ask everybody. And you just mentioned one thing. You said your morning routine. What does your morning routine look like?
It's transitioned over the years. I've experimented with a lot of things. If you go to goodinthehead.com and then click on the menu button and go to the challenges, there's one called the Habit Hacking Challenge. And those are the things I do currently. And I do stray from it. I don't consistently and perfectly do all those things. What I do now is accept myself as human, and I always do my best. And there's a quote, I think on the podcast we did on the Good and Head podcast, I read it, but it's from Don Miguel Ruiz from his book, The Four Agreements. And it says, always do your best. Your best is going to change from moment to moment. It will be different when you are healthy as opposed to sick. Under any circumstance, simply do your best and you will avoid self judgment, self abuse, and regret. So, the morning routine that I have is I wake up every day at 3:15 and I do what's called box breathing. I learned that on one of the podcasts from Mark Devine. He was a guest on Impact Theory. He explained how to do it. You can YouTube it or Google it. And basically, it's just breathe in for 4 counts, hold it for 4 counts, let go of all the air, breathe out for 4 counts, and then hold it for another 4. And as I do this for 5 to 10 minutes in the morning, I'll sit there and sort of like rub my wife's neck and shoulders, because at work we're pretty tense all the time.
Right.
And doing something physical with the breathing really wakes me up, and even at that hour. And it's enlivening. And then I hop into the shower, and as soon as I hop in the shower and the water hits me, I will go through a gratitude practice and think of everything that I possibly can to be grateful for in that moment. I mean, there's so much to be grateful for, and doing that
Yeah.
consistently has been one of the most empowering tools out of all of them. Gratitude expressed is a creation, and it opens you up to receive more of what you're actually grateful for. I really believe that.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think that is probably one of the single most powerful things that you can do is just be thankful. And I love November because it brings Thanksgiving around, and it just makes you think even more about the things that we truly have to be thankful for. It's easy for us to complain. If you're looking for something to complain about, you don't have to look very far. But to be thankful for just small things is so powerful. And you're right, saying it over and over. I like to write mine down. I just feel like when I write it, it it just ingrains it more in my mind and helps me carry it throughout the day. The other question I have for you, I used to where I worked before, I would interview a lot of young people, and of course, my little show is called Struggle, Grow, Succeed, and I like to ask people what success is to them, because I know a lot of people have different definitions. So, my question to you is, Pete, what does success mean to you?
I love that question. I remember an interview I did with Jason Archer on his podcast, and I told him, and it just popped into my mind, and I really believe it's true, that success is just a thought away. If you believe you're successful, simply doing your best and living in the here and now and being as present as you possibly can with yourself and with others, I think that in and of itself is success, and everything is icing on the cake after that. It's just more and more and more. And isn't it interesting how, what we focus on, we feed, whether it's
Right.
complaints, we'll get more to complain about, or if we're thinking about things to be grateful for, those things tend to be all that we can see throughout the day. So to start a gratitude practice habitually with a repetition first thing every morning is such an amazing tool, and it's hard to do sometimes. But
Yeah,
if it's
it is.
habit,
If it was easy, everybody would do it. That's
yeah,
what I always said. Also, uh, you reminded me of something that I wrote, put on my podcast was about the Native American told the story of the two wolves. I don't know if you'd heard it before, about a good wolf and the evil wolf, and how that they were constantly fighting against each other. And the little boy asked his grandfather, he said, "Well, in the end, grandfather, who wins?" And he said, "The one you feed, son, the one you feed." And that's just exactly what you just said there. So, what we feed ourselves, what we feed our mind, is ultimately what we're going to become, I think, is pretty much what you were saying.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I love that story, and it's a great reminder that whatever we do focus on, we're feeding. And if we're hyper focused on one thing, then everything else we're not focusing on sort of dissipates until it disappears entirely, including things like depression, anxiety. I mean, if we're able to hyper focus on what we do want more of, then that's a real gift, because there's a thing, Mark Dawes, it's Mark. His last name is Dawes. He's got an 8-minute video that I listen to quite often, simply because I know of the importance of repetition now. He talks about the reticular activating system, and it's installed in all of our brains right behind the amygdala. It's teeny tiny, but its entire function, its purpose, is to, out of the 40 billion bits of information coming at us at all times through our five senses, only allows in what we're thinking about. And so if, let's say, you think about a green car, all of a sudden you see green cars everywhere you go. It's the weirdest thing. Or if you're thinking about something that you're grateful for, pretty soon the momentum builds, and that thing that you're grateful for, you tend to see it more often, and then actually perpetuate and manifest that more in your life, you know. And so to focus on what you do want more of, that's one of the alarms that I have set every day to go off while I'm working. What do you want more of?
Well, that's good.
To answer that
That's good.
question mentally while I'm working, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I need to realign. I need to refocus on what I do want instead of complaining and whining about whatever.
That's right.
Easy to do.
Easy to do. Where do you see yourself going from here, Pete? What I know you're doing a podcast. You do a lot of writing. You do a lot of reading and pouring into yourself. Um, what do you want to accomplish in the future? What are some of your aspirations and your goals?
I want to, first of all, keep doing what I'm doing. And I want to be open to everything. I want to experiment with everything that I learn about and continue to keep the things that are working well and empowering me to upgrade uh, the me that I represent in this body, you know, in the human form, and to be present with my loved ones as much as possible, and just simply to do my best every day. And I think that by doing these things, what's meant to be will come into my life and will manifest as it needs to. And I really believe in doing things for the greater good of the collective whole, for everyone on earth. If there's anything that we can do or share or put out into the universe that someone else may be able to take and run with and create something from, we're all in this thing together. You know, everybody's got a story to share. And as I continue to do the YouTube podcast show, the Good in the Head podcast, and bring on different content providers and leaders and teachers and doctors, the things that I learn about, I get to experiment with. And it's an automatic and easy upgrade of my own self and the personal reality I'm living. So I, as far as goals, I do want to publish a few books that I've written. They're online on the website for anyone to copy and repost to create something of their own out of. And I just want to be the best me that I can possibly be and always be upgrading.
Yeah, that's great. And a lot of times, people have goals and desires that don't really align with who they are. And I think sometimes people don't become successful in certain things because it's probably not meant for them to do that. Um, and I
Yeah.
like the way that you talk about, things just happen. And I asked you before we came on, you interview a lot of very interesting people. And I said, where do you get those people? And you said, well, it's just through contacts, through Instagram, and they just happen into your life. Um, and just allowing that to happen can have a great impact. I don't even remember how you and I connected, but I'm glad that we did. A lot of the things you say are very interesting to me, and you've helped me in many ways. And I think, you were talking about Tony Robbins and all of the people down that line. I think of the people that he has impacted that would have never happened if it hadn't been for Jim Rohn giving him a job at that time, and the same happened with Jim, and now it's affected about a lot of other people, and so sowing seed. You don't ever
Mhm.
know when it's going to grow, but as long as you can continue to sow that seed, if it helps one person, I don't know if that's how you say it, but if it helps one person, it's worth it, isn't it?
Can you imagine? I mean, you throw a pebble into a pond and the ripple effects, they just go out seemingly forever, you know? And can you imagine the ripple effects that your show is creating in the lives of others? And then let's say they take that pebble and create their own ripple effects. And it's interesting to think how far these ripples can go because of one person. You know, John Earl Schoaf. I gotta show this book to the audience. 7 Strategies for Wealth and Happiness by Jim Rohn. He tells in here how he met his mentor, John Earl Schoaf. And had he not met him, Tony Robbins would have probably been on a
Probably.
different trajectory, certainly not exactly identical or the same as where he is. And he impacts millions
Absolutely.
who then turn
Absolutely.
around and eventually impact millions as well.
Well, it's super important to do what you feel like you're called to do or meant to do, and to fulfill those callings. And I thank you for fulfilling yours and the impact that you've had in my life and to others as well. Um, I want everyone to be sure and visit your website. It's goodinthehead.com, and also your podcast. How often do you publish your podcast on YouTube?
Um, that's the interesting thing. As they come in, I used to be very rigid and black and white, and I had to do things in a certain order and a certain time and a certain way. And now the guests either reach out to me or I'm inspired in a moment to email someone or reach out on Instagram messaging or Facebook, and the right people come at the perfect moment every time. It's been a wonderful experience, and so I don't have a set schedule. I'm letting it unfold as it wants to. Basically, I'm no
Absolutely.
longer trying to control. I'm not attached to the need to control everything outside of me anymore because it's hard enough controlling what's going on in here, especially in today's
That's
age,
true.
right? With
Yeah.
the pandemic and the shutdowns, the economy the way it is, people losing their lives the way they had them, knew them.
Yeah. And losing their livelihoods. And we're in a time that I think, we need to be good in the head. We need to uh, be in control of our mind. We have to watch what we feed our mind in order to keep us strong. Um, I do about the same thing on YouTube. I try to publish some things there and on my podcast as it comes to me. I don't want to just waste airspace, and I'm sure that's how you feel. But I'm really glad that I met you, Pete, and I'm glad that you took the time to spend your Friday evening with us. And I know you live out west, and so it's a little earlier there. It's getting a
Yeah,
little later here, but thanks again. And I want you to know if I can ever help you, I'm here for you. And I would love for people to follow you and see what that you have to offer.
I really appreciate the opportunity to spend time and energy with you. I love you. I love what you're doing. I love the work. I really appreciate the kindness and the comments and the questions and the interactions there. I really am grateful for platforms like this. Everyone has a story. I think that if we all start sharing our stories, we can all learn much more quickly from the wisdom and experience of others rather than having to go through and learn things the hard way. You know.
That's exactly right. And that's where a lot of people are making a lot of money by just selling their knowledge. You can learn from someone that's been down that road and not have to go down that road yourself if you will just be um, patient enough to listen and then take some action behind that. But Pete, thanks again. It's been a real pleasure. I know we both said we could sit and talk for hours, but I don't know if anybody wants to listen to us for hours. But uh, thank you for being on the Friday Fix, and I hope that you've give some people out there some things to think about. And follow Pete, go check out some of his stuff, and get those books published so we can read them. I'm sure there's some great stuff in
Right.
there.
They're
And
free online right now on the website. And
okay,
thank you,
great,
Charles and
great.
Stephanie and Forrest and Stacy. I appreciate you all.
Yeah, thank you for everyone who joined. I seen that's my oldest daughter, Stassi, that jumped on
Oh,
there.
Stas.
So I know that I got my family backing me up. So, and I know you do too.
Yeah.
So that's very important. But Pete, we'll talk again. Thank you, buddy, and I hope you have a great weekend. Go get on that kayak or take a hike. I know you love the outdoors. So
Yes, sir. Nature is a healer.
yes, it is. All right. And we look forward to being back again next Friday night for the Friday Fix. Come join us.